This is a so-named walk and talk as per math fails / emendum, and it's on the population issue. Now, I don't feel really qualified to speak about this, but philosophically I think I can address it. And it's non-conventional, the perspective that I'm going to take. At least it's outside of, kind of what probably would be suggested through people like Don Beck and Claire W. Graves. It's not that I don't think that they have integrity and so forth. Absolutely I do. I think that somewhat they're being swayed maybe by the political perspective on this issue. And again, I don't feel qualified to really make a judgment on a massive system scale theory, in that, that we're dealing with system science here, just as global warming is a sort of system science. System sciences are difficult because of the number of variables that you have to take into account to get an accurate reading on actuality, right? So, like global warming, the actual effect of carbon dioxide, you're having to take in a number of many variables simultaneously, all of which are having different impacts on the global system. And then you're trying to read out the actual consequence of one particular part of that system. And similar to this is humans. I mean, humans are, it's a little bit easier in some regards because we obviously live a human life. And in so doing, we know the kind of consumptive attitudes and dispositions humans have. And us in first world countries are particularly consumerist. Now, a lot of this, though, keep in mind, is driven by a system itself that is controlling us mentally to some major extent, in the sense that to keep us passive, there's a degree in which they want us to be consumptive without really thoughtfulness and the consequences of the consumptiveness. And so, of course, there's about 20 to 30% of the population that are very awake to this reality and are very choosy about the kind of consumptive attitudes that they have. They know, they put a lot of thought into the kind of products that they buy, in other words. But still the majority of the Western culture don't, right? So you have about 70% probably, thereabouts, of the culture that just go with the overall schema, or the kind of the overall system, in other words. So, holding that in account, it is the case that our system is designed to break shit down so that we buy more. So, I think, the Zeitgeist the Zeitgeist followers have a word for this. It's something like planned obsolescence. So shit is created such that it will break down within a short period of time. However, I'm a big believer in a few things. One is that we can create beautiful systems that create very little waste, and that recycle things extraordinarily well. I'm involved in Triac, the company that I work for, does this with wood waste. And we're also working on things like creosol. Hopefully, like the railway trucks that I'm walking on right now, these have creosol in them, which is a toxic chemical. But if you can extract it, then you can get the wood waste, which is still useful in certain regards, and get the creosol and do different things with that. So I'm a big believer in beautiful systems design, and the future of that is immense. But there's not really much of a backing for it. Like, our company is hugely struggling in certain regards because the actual municipality, which is always calls itself green, is fighting foot and nail against getting this, because they make more money off people dumping this shit into the garbage dump and creating massive waste when there isn't even room for it in our waste disposal system. So it's really, in so many regards, utterly insane, but that's the way our system is designed, economically speaking. So that's one huge thing that you got to keep in mind. The economic system is designed such that wants you to look at the population issue with with that economic dollar in your head, in a sense, I think. And there's also the very fact, especially in places like Canada, where it's underpopulated. We don't have enough people in Canada in many regards. It is kind of a crazy place to live with the weather, you know, the winter months, especially in interior Canada, which is where I'm from originally, has awful weather, and therefore, you know, it's not a very good place to be. I'm on the coastal side, and it's really quite a nice place to be, but now I lived in Manitoba for most of my life. So there's that thing, you know. There's certain centers on the planet that are highly densely populated, but there's other areas that aren't. And so, you know, a lot of us live in those highly densely populated urban centers, and we kind of forget that there are these other spaces vastly unpopulated by the human family. But again, when you balance the amount of resources to make up for those urban centers, a lot of this stuff is getting eaten up. So there is a calculus involved here in how many people we can take. I think Bucky Fuller said, you know, 10 billion is something like where you want to stop growth. And I think that seems pretty reasonable, about 10 billion. But I'm really worried actually about depopulation, forced depopulation. That to me is the bigger issue, humanitarian issue. Of course, we need better educational systems to show the problems with, you know, bearing children when you're not ready. And it does take a certain responsibility level. I have a friend of mine that says, you know, you ought to get a degree in taking care of children. And I think in a sense that's very real because of the importance of children. Children are the lighthouses for the next generation. They are, you know, they're going to usher in the brighter future. And so, you know, the more intelligent children are, the greater our future potentials hold. Our system's backwards. It's creating our school system's 150 years out of date. So the choices that our children are making are often very stupid because the system is stupid and it's indoctrinating us with stupid ideas in large measure. I mean, it's understandable. Conventions die hard, but still. And then there's this whole political element that itself has a lot of darkness inbuilt into it. So again, conventions die hard, but I'm starting to become of the mind that the kind of government structures that we see are, again, outdated by maybe 1,000 years in many regards. We can do so much better in leadership on this planet. So those are some issues that I think we ought to hold in mind when we're thinking about the population issue. Be well.